Welcome to Atlanta Diaries, a place to have meaningful conversation with breakthrough women to explore the ebb and flow of their unique journeys. I'm your host, Enma Popley. Thank you very much for joining me. My guest today is Madhura DasGupta. Madhura is a business leader and an advocate for women's economic justice and rights. She was a banker for 25 years, holding leadership positions in IDFC, Standard Chartered, and ANZ Grindlays Bank. Madhura was one of the 12 women across India to be awarded the British Chevening Scholarship in 2003. On the cusp of turning 50, Madhura founded her unique startup, Aspire for Her, with a mission to create a generation of financially independent women. Since its birth on Women's Day 2020, the rapidly growing community at Aspire for Her has become a movement for women in India and across the world, getting together members, supporters, and mentors to unleash the trillion-dollar potential in the Indian economy. Under Madhura's leadership, Aspire for Her has been conferred awards from UN Women and International Advertising Association. Madhura's vision for Aspire for Her is to impact over 1 million women and add $5 billion to India's GDP by 2025. Hi, Madhura. Welcome to the show. I can't tell you how excited I am for our conversation.
Same here, Enma. Thank you for having me. Very excited to be on your show.
Awesome. 1 million women to the workforce by 2025. That's a lofty goal. Kudos to you for daring to dream. So why don't you share with us your early years which shaped your journey?
Thank you so much, Enma. 1 million by 2025 is the vision that we have for Aspire for Her. We want to add 1 million women to the workforce by 2025 and 10 million by 2030. We started Aspire for Her because I was getting very disappointed with the gender data that I saw emanating from India. I saw that we were absolutely at the bottom in terms of economic participation of women. And there's been a sharply declining trajectory in terms of women's workforce participation for the past 15 years or more. And I saw the best and the brightest women all around me in India. So I felt this was not altogether fair and somebody needed to do something about the problem. I thought that someone could be me, and that is how Aspire for Her was born. About my early years, I grew up in a household with a very strong feminist father who ensured that my mother, who was a topper in economics, went out to work and she unleashed her full potential. That's been the guiding force in my life as I was growing up.
That's very interesting. You spoke a lot about travels when we spoke last time. How did they guide you in your journey thus far?
It's a cliche, but I truly feel that travel broadens the mind. When I was in the 8th grade, my father got posted in Ghana, a small West African country where he was helping set up the railways. And my parents decided that I could actually miss 3 months of school, miss my annual examination, and actually go out and spend those 3 months in Africa trying to get to know a new culture. So my sister and I actually did that. That was our first exposure at a large scale to what was happening in other parts of the world. We traveled a lot. We traveled to a lot of European countries, other Asian countries, and of course, Africa. And we realized that at a very early age that there were women across the world who probably had some similarities, some problems which were similar to each other, but they were also very different from each other. There was a lot to learn from the women in other countries. And I was trying to, in my young mind at that time, correlate Indian women with some of the journeys that I was seeing in other parts of the world.
So what did those correlations help you understand?
Enma, across the globe in different ways, I realized that women were expressing themselves, and those were early 80s, early 90s. Women were expressing themselves with a lot of joy and a lot of self-expression. When I was seeing young girls growing up in India, I would see the girls with a lot of energy, a lot of passion as they were very young, always asking questions, questioning norms, talking to people in very bold voices. But slowly, I would see that those bold voices somehow became smaller. They somehow became softer. And I saw a lot of them conform to what perhaps society, their parents, their teachers, people around them were expecting them to be perfect little girls, having perfect lives, being perfect daughters and daughters-in-law and mothers and wives. And I felt that somewhere the spontaneity and the joy to be were actually sort of, petered away somewhere. And that was what I was seeing in some of the girls in India as I was growing up. And it actually makes me sad when I see a young girl who's full of life, who's full of questions and very bold, very sassy. And I keep thinking, are we going to kill that joy in her life? Are we going to kill that self-expression that she has today?
That's such an interesting perspective. And I so agree with you. Coming from a small town myself, I feel that how can we give that same exposure, that same perspective, that same daring to dream kind of a goal to those young girls? What then is Madhura's plan? You speak a lot about financial independence. I'm wondering, how does that correlate with this solution to the sadness and ensuring that this joy river stays?
A great question. I feel very strongly that financial independence is the cornerstone of all other forms of independence. Emotional, mental, physical, and the key to all joy as well. And this is just not about money being the key to happiness, money being the key to liberation and independence, etc. But it is a very important part of the equation. Because if you are financially independent, not just if you have money, but if you're financially independent, you can actually walk out of all kinds of distress in your life. You can walk out of an abusive relationship. You can walk out of a bad marriage. You can walk out of any bad situation because you can take your own calls. And that's the reason why we have a very simplistic approach to adding women to our country's economic growth, to adding women to this magic equation, the $1 trillion opportunity that India has in front of it. And we do strongly, firmly believe that if more women are financially independent through any one of the three E's, whether it's employment, entrepreneurship, or education, which leads to one of these two, then we will be in a very different India. And we will truly see a country that is prospering at multiple levels.
So beautiful. Any anecdotes which has really validated and, keeps on convincing you that you're doing the right job?
These stories are what keep us going every day. And I'm just going to tell you a couple of them which inspire me every day. The first one is about this woman called Preeti Kate. She stays in Dhule in Maharashtra. It's a small town in Maharashtra. She lost her very young husband to COVID. She decided that life was not worth living. And she joined our community. We built this community last year after the brutal second wave of COVID called Not Alone. This community was meant for women who had lost their primary breadwinners to COVID. And this thought triggered off in my head when I lost a friend to COVID. And as we were trying to build a corpus for the friend's daughter's education, the wife told me, I don't know whether I have a bank account. To a purely transactional question of which bank account can we actually remit the funds to. So that triggered up the thought. And Not Alone was really a product of that thought. Preeti joined the Not Alone community. And at that time, she was emotionally devastated. She was financially insecure. But as she joined the community, she got a lot of confidence. She got a safe space to talk about her problems and to grow out of this tremendous grief that was burdening her. Today, she has transitioned out of Not Alone. She runs an abacus center with 62 students and earns more than 1 lakh of rupees per month, taking care of her family and her in-laws and everybody else around her.
So powerful. I'm visualizing that you've given her that support, you've given her that psychological safety. So how does Aspire for Her continue to journey with her?
Let's take only this example, and it's true for all other examples as well. When somebody joins Aspire for Her, we often see that there's a lot that they want to take from Aspire for Her. We have a 5-point mindset change model that we work on. So we call it rather cheekily, E cubed is equal to MC cubed. So E cube is where we want all women in India to be, which is either employment, entrepreneurship, or education, which leads to one of these two. And MC Cube stands for the various pillars of mindset change that we work on. M stands for mentors and role models. The first C stands for courses, cohorts, and learning. The second C stands for career previews. And the third one for the entire peer community that supports this change. As we see women entering Aspire for Her as mentors, we see them more as takers. They consume our resources, they participate in the sessions, they learn and they grow as they move along. But as they grow into a community and as they move forward, we see that a lot of giving also starts happening. So the journey of Aspire for Her is a journey of a lifetime. It is about giving and taking. It's just that the proportion of giving and taking keeps changing in your various life stages. Where you are, Enma, you are a mentor and you are going to be giving a lot. But don't forget that when a mentee comes up to you, you will also learn yourself and therefore you will also grow as a human being.
I can't agree with you enough. I'm a big proponent of reverse mentoring. Even today, my two boys, they often give me such interesting perspectives that I'm like, this is a blind spot. I didn't even see myself. So yes, reverse mentoring and equally fulfilling. Aspire for Her has become a very young and vibrant brand. How have you made this possible, Madhura? Tell us more about this.
So the day that I started Aspire for Her was 8th of March, 2020, Women's Day 2020. And at that time, it was just a germ of an idea. The people who were working with me, I would say the inspiration behind setting up Aspire for Her was my mother, because I was complaining to her about the economic distress that our country was going through. And she turned around and said, I'm hearing all that you're saying, but what are you doing about it? And that's when germ of the idea really took shape. And the other person who actually helped me a lot was my daughter, who at that time, because of COVID, was back home from college. And she was doing her college courses throughout the night. And during the day, she was working on Aspire for Her with me, with all her friends. So the first few things that we did in Aspire for Her, the concept, the strategy, the outreach programs, the ambassador programs, all of this I did with a group of very young women, 18, 19, and 20 years old. And I was very proud of them. I am very proud of them. They have all gone on to doing brilliant things in their own careers themselves. And that's how you see a lot of the tonality of Aspire for Her, the voice of Aspire for Her was theirs. And it wasn't my 50-year-old voice talking about my 50-year-old sensibilities, but it was a very young and a vibrant voice which understood the way the young wanted to relate to a brand.
That's awesome. Let's backtrack, Madhura. Obviously, your 25-year-old banking journey, I'm sure, has added a lot of value to the Aspire for Her journey. So talk to me about how your 25 years have helped you shape the vision and the mission and the roadmap for Aspire for Her.
I think every part of my journey had something to do with what I do in Aspire for Her. I was a retail banker for a very long part of my career. So my business management degree, my business management experience actually helps me build Aspire for Her every day. I spent some time in finance and I was heading finance and strategy for a part of Standard Chartered Bank at one point in time. And that helps me understand P&Ls and balance sheets better. And the last part of my 25-year-old career was actually strangely in HR as I was building a very young bank. So that entire startup culture, organization, how to build something, and also how to get a better sense of human resources really helped me also a lot to today talk to our clients, our potential clients, and have a clear understanding and a world view of the concept of diversity and inclusion in a much deeper way. So all parts of my career actually helped me build Aspire for Her in some way.
I'm sure you're aware that I'm so closely involved with Jay Vakil also, and sitting far away in the US, my biggest value add, I think, is that I'm nudging them every single day about culture and how important culture is to us. Cliche it may sound, but they do say culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So what does Aspire for Her stand for? I know you're a startup right now, but how are you building your culture?
So there are two parts to building culture, I would say. One is within Aspire for Her, and the other is outside Aspire for Her. Because we are part of building cultures across many different organizations, not just us. So let me start with the one within. And as I said, we started off as a very young, eclectic group of people, starting from girls from elite colleges to girls from very, very lesser known towns, all coming together, but all of them very young, and forming this brand called Aspire for Her, forming a voice which was truly ours. And suddenly we realized that the problem that I had started to solve was the India problem. But we found women across the globe resonating with us. So today, if you actually see, we have women from 60 different countries. And some of these countries I haven't even heard of who have come and become part of Aspire for Her. There is something obviously universal about our culture, something which resonates with women across the globe, as well as men who actually want to do something about the problem. So that's how we see our culture evolving. It's quite democratic, it's young, it's vibrant, and we'd like it to stay that way and constantly changing ourselves with whatever is happening around us. So that's the way we like to look at ourselves. Today, it's not that we don't work with a young band of folks anymore. We have a lot of folks who are mature, who are professionals. But what remains consistent is the kind of collaborative culture that we want to build. We like to hear every voice. We like to ensure that everyone has a say in building what we are building. And we like to encourage voices of dissent. That's who we are today. And hopefully we will keep evolving as we go forward. When we talk to other organizations, and we do speak with a lot of global organizations, we build communities for them. We also see their cultures somehow when they collide with ours, we see them changing. We see the mindsets changing. For example, we were working with a global bank who actually were helping us put together a technology platform. And there was a small group of people who were using 20% of their free time to work with us and to build our tech platform for us. Strangely, out of the people who were working, a few men who were working with us, after they started talking to us and building the technology platform for us, some of them came up and said, my wife had taken a break after childbirth. I have now ensured that she gets back into the workforce. Some of them said that, my sister is going through this very bad phase in her marriage, and I want to ensure that she is financially independent. Their language changed. And that changing language is the first thing about changing cultures.
You've truly created a movement, Madhura. So congratulations again. How are you exerting this influence? Stakeholders across the world, partnerships across the world. Define Madhura as a brand, define Madhura's leadership style. Help me understand what keeps you going.
I think we're just getting started, Emma. Okay. I don't think we have achieved anything so far. I will only say that we've achieved something after we have bucked the trend of this declining trajectory, after we have reached at least 1 million, because below 1 million women additionally in the workforce, below that kind of number in our country, it really doesn't make sense. It doesn't ring true for us to celebrate anything, to celebrate any victory. So that's where we are. I don't think that we are anywhere close to feeling very good about ourselves. There is a long way to go, and the best is yet to come.
Let's shift gears. I want to double click on how are men in the workforce responding to Aspire for Her? Where do you see them in the journey of Aspire for Her?
So let's talk about the 5% men who really, really understand what we are doing and how they want to interact with us. A lot of men come forward to ask whether they can mentor folks at Aspire for Her. A lot of men have come forward to help out girls in distress, especially in the not alone community, women in distress. They've come forward to offer jobs, to offer guidance as to how to get the jobs, etc. A lot of them have funded education. A lot of them have volunteered completely selflessly in the work that we do. I'm very, very grateful to them. What we haven't done perhaps well enough is to build that community of supporters of men who strongly feel about this problem and would like to do something about it. That's in the anvil. I want to do that sooner than later, to get all of those men together and to ensure that, there is also a safe space for them to discuss these things. Because face it, 95% of men in our country do not understand what we are trying to do. But there's one thought that I'll leave you with. I find a lot of men reacting in a very beautiful way to Aspire for Her, because we're not bringing out that us versus them sort of an ecosystem. And we're saying that if we unleash that $1 trillion potential for India, both men and women will be beneficiaries. So it's not that it's a confrontational combat that we are getting into, or women are eating into that pie, or women are sort of moving into a territory which is supposed to be reserved for men. Not at all. I think that appreciation has also helped us get a lot of men excited about the work that we do. But yes, it's only 5%.
So what about the 95%? Are we doing something about that? How are we approaching that?
Our journey every day is about also talking to that 95%, getting them to know what we do. And I think awareness is the first step to do anything, right? Whether the person is interested in doing something and then acting upon it. But without awareness, there's nowhere that we can reach. So we're really building awareness right now. We're at that stage.
You spoke a little bit about allied stories to me last time. Any stories you want to share with us and help us use this platform to reach out to those 95%?
Yeah, I think that's a good thought. And, I'll talk about 3 or 4 allies who have really gone out of their way to sort of support us. One of them is a gentleman called Dr. Anuttam Ghosh. He decided that he wanted to do something with a legacy that had been left behind by his mother. He found this very unique. We found ourselves in a very uniquely sad situation where a young girl was almost having to stop school because her father had passed away due to COVID and she was not able to continue her education. And Dr. Ghosh stepped in just after a few minutes of conversation and said, here I am. I am just going to do everything for this girl and ensure that she goes to school and she gets educated. I think that's a beautiful ally story that we have. Siddharth Batra, who is a young professional brought up by a single mother, he decided that, he wanted to do something for all the single moms out there. And again, every day he would sit in from 9 o'clock in the night after his day's work was over with our Not Alone team. And the Not Alone team was being led by some wonderful mentors of Aspire for Her, including Rima Sen and a whole lot of others. And Siddharth would sit every day, plan, deliberate, manage the entire project and ensure that every person in our Not Alone community actually got the resources that they needed. We have another a lawyer called Deepak Sabharwal. Many of our Not Alone members were actually finding it difficult because their in-laws were turning them out of their homes. They were not getting the kind of support that they needed, and unfortunately, relatives were not turning out to be very interested in helping them. It was rather the other side. And Deepak helped us with so many cases, giving us legal advice, giving our women the right way to go forward, dealing with insurance disputes and all of that. I'm just giving 3 very random examples that come into my head. And these are all allies who have done absolutely wonderful work. We have covered some of their stories on our platform as well. We're very, very grateful for having allies like this. And I'd like to welcome everyone listening in to also be a part of the movement in some way. This is not about men versus women. This is about men and women doing things together and ensuring that India is a more prosperous country and better in every possible way.
Beautiful. I shared with you and, you helped me to get some more respondents for my survey. It was a very informal survey, but it was global. It was women across the world. Some interesting questions came up and I want to share those questions with you. They've got into the workforce. They've pushed themselves out of their comfort zones. Now the question they're asking is, how do we make our voice heard? We could be one woman amongst 10 men. And they say that men have to state and women have to convince. So how will you help them answer this question?
First of all, it's very true. I think there is no reason to say that they haven't hit the nail on the head. They have. And we do a lot of stuff at Aspire for Her to give them more confidence, to give them that ability to state their own views, and to ensure that their voice is heard in a room full of people. It could be a simple lesson in body language, wherein we sometimes tell women that do not shrink into that corner, but occupy that space that you have, claim that space that you have. It could be a simple thing around how do you negotiate for salary? Because women have a very uncomfortable relationship with money and they do not want to often ask for a higher salary, even if they feel they deserve it. And how to ask that question? It could be something around how do you talk about your gap, your career gap? Because many women feel very embarrassed and ashamed to say that they have taken a gap. On contrary, on the other side, they've actually taken the gap because they want to do something fairly important for society. Maybe it is to bring a life into the world, or maybe it is to, help their family grow. We try to take away the stigma from these conversations. We try to take away some of the awkwardness from the statements that they have to make so that they are much more confident and much more articulate about stating these facts. So this is some of the work that we do every day. And this is how we try to ensure that they have the confidence to go forward, just move out of their comfort zone, and are able to have these conversations without any fear or shame.
Another question which came up was, the corporate journey is like a roller coaster ride. There are highs and there are lows. How do I stay relevant? How do I not give up? There are times when there are very, very challenging situations, when I just want to run away from the situation. I'm quoting verbatim the question on the survey. So how will you answer a young girl and motivate her on how not to give up?
That's actually at the heart of Aspire for Her. What we tell women is to never, ever give up. And I think there are two very important words in the corporate journey and in life's journey as well. One is perseverance and the other is resilience. Resilience is, of course, the art of bouncing back after you've had a particularly bad knock. And what's important here is not what you do at the time of the knock, but how you react to it. And what we always say at Aspire for Her is how do you brush yourself up, dust yourself up, and just get up out there and again face the next day without giving up. There are many things that we do around this, whether it is telling stories of inspirational women who have had a lot of adversities in their life, whether it is letting many women talk about their own journeys. They may not be leaders, they may not be some inspirational figures somewhere, but they're everyday people like you or me who talk about their journeys. Somebody talks about their husband suffering from Parkinson's and how she burnt the midnight oil to become an Amazon Cloud certified practitioner. And today she has joined AWS. These kind of stories, which do not come out in any kind of media, any kind of mainstream newspapers, but these are stories we tell at Aspire for Her. And that is how we try to inspire folks to live their best life every day.
Interesting. Madhura, what are your non-negotiables as a leader and as the founder of Aspire for Her?
That's a tough question. But, I would say, I think there is only one non-negotiable theme in my life, which is ethics. So I would never, ever, even if we have a star performer who is doing very, very well, but if there is compromise, if she's making a compromise to ethics in some way and not being true to herself or true to the organization, then that's something that I will clearly not put up with. So I think that's the only one non-negotiable thing that I have.
And what about the non-negotiables when you're looking for partnerships, looking for other stakeholders? I listened into one of your interviews and you spoke very passionately about ruthlessness and one of your underlying philosophies. Tell me more about that.
I am fairly ruthless about certain things in life, and shamelessness also is what you would have heard about. When we're looking for partners, we actually look for partners who will walk the mile in our shoes with us. And they have to resonate with us in terms of their philosophy, their thinking, and their worldview. So we never enter into partnerships just because there's a commercial element to it. We only take on clients when we realize that there is an intersection of interest, there is an intersection of thought processes and philosophies here. And they do believe in our vision and mission, and they do want to be with us exactly in the way in which we're looking at things. So call us ruthless or call us straitjacketed, but that's how we are. Because I think by now, thanks to my 25-year-old journey, I think I do realize when we see partners who are looking at diversity as a tick box, that's not who we want to work with. And we're quite ruthless about saying no to working with those partners.
Talk to me about Madhura as a person. How do you stay positive? How do you ensure that the team stays motivated? You've created this very, very bold vision, right? And you're just not even ready to celebrate the in my mind, the 100,000 number or the 150,000 numbers. How do you stay?
200,000 actually.
There you go. So what's keeping this going? Like, I'm sure you've got moments of highs and lows yourself.
Every day we have moments of highs and lows, but what we like to celebrate is impact. So we don't like to celebrate numbers so much. We like to celebrate that one person who has maybe walked out of a bad marriage and managed to get a job, that one person who has managed to unburden that entire grief that she was going through post a loss, and she has managed to become financially independent, that one girl from Patna who is studying blockchain and who wants to work with JP Morgan Chase, one of our clients, because they came in on our platform and she says, nothing is too high for me. I want to aim that level. So we celebrate these stories. These little points of impact in individual lives is what gives us the most satisfaction and joy. And thankfully, Enma, every day we have something to celebrate. And that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps the team going as well.
Absolutely relatable. I mean, every coaching conversation brings a smile to my face, and there's no substitute that to that impact.
Correct. Okay, you get that, right?
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about how do we bring in more members? I really would like you to sort of use this platform actually to talk about it.
No, Emma, first of all, thank you for giving us this platform, because this is how we bring in more members. This is how people from across the globe will actually get to know about the work that we're doing. And they will, hopefully, some of them will want to be a part of a movement like ours and will want to give in their time, their passion, and just themselves to Aspire for Her. So we're at www.aspireforher.com. And it takes about 3 minutes of your life to fill up the form and become part of the movement that we're trying to drive. It is absolutely free of cost. But once you get in, you sort of enter into our own world. You look at our 5-point mindset change model, and we're sure that you will have a lot to give when you join Aspire for Her. And hopefully you'll have something to take away as well.
You said you start the journey at 16 or 18, correct? So if I had to motivate 16-year-old or an 18-year-old to become a member, what's the premise? How do I convince them? Because it's almost like a blind spot sometimes.
Yeah, because most of them, and 4 out of 5 girls in India, have no successful, relatable woman role model, professional woman role model in their network. So they don't know what we are talking about. And that's where our mentors come in. So mentors like yourself, when they see the CEO of an organization, they see the CXO of an organization or a business leader who's actually leading meetings, who's doing fantastic things, who's working on great projects, leading large teams. We feel that if she can see it, she can be it. And that's the sort of philosophy that we want to drive. So yes, it's a lot of marketing to young minds as well, because that's the only way in which we know that we'll be able to motivate herself to think higher and to aspire for more.
I want to double click a little bit on your perspective on financial independence. You're sort of not even hesitating to say that that's at the core of a woman's journey. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and maybe I'll start with a little story of my friend who's a very brilliant person and has been a homemaker for the last 20 odd years. She wanted to pay something for her father's illness, for her father's treatment. Father was ill. And she discovered that she didn't have any money that she could call her own. While she was in perfectly good terms with her husband, she just didn't want to ask her husband for money for the father's treatment. And she felt a huge sense of vacuum, of disappointment, of depression almost, when she realized that her parents had done so much for her, but this was a very small thing that she could have done and she could not do it. And that's what actually also ignited my thought in terms of starting something for women so that they don't become her in the future. And as this story was unfolding, there was another story parallelly that I was also part of. And this was a young friend of my daughter's who worked with an MNC organization, and she was going through an arranged marriage. She walked into the organization one day, waltzed in and gave in a resignation letter because she said that the family that I'm getting married into doesn't allow their women to work. I was seeing these two stories and I said, doesn't she know that she's going to become my friend in 20 years' time? Feeling depressed and disappointed. And that's when I thought that there needs to be a conversation around this for women of all ages, starting from as young as when they're 16, so that we actually seed the thoughts in their young minds to say, never ever give up on your career. It is important. And it is at the core of it is being financially independent, because that's where everything else stems from there.
Very interesting. This has been great, Madhura, and thank you very much again for all these perspectives. Atlanta Diaries is a platform to help women transition, help women understand and overcome all challenges which are a reality in the workforce today. Any parting thoughts on what can they do differently, or any parting thoughts on your journey as a leader to help these women transition and learn and relearn?
Well, I want to really wish Atlanta Diaries all the very best. I hope that people across various countries, across the globe, listen to you, Enma, listen to your voice, and listen to all the other voices that you're trying to bring to the fore. And only one parting thought to all of those listening in: do continue to aspire for her. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was great. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Atlanta Diaries in its entirety. I really hope you found the conversation insightful or inspiring. I really wish for Atlanta Diaries to be a place where we can learn and unlearn our definitions of success, build a community for the ones who may have multiple North Stars, and connect deeply beyond the limit of this audio file. I do have a request for you. Please share with others who you feel will benefit from this conversation. Because of these conversations, or even a small segment of them, can help champion the journey of even one woman, it'll be worth all the effort. I would love to get suggestions of breakthrough women from you to help strengthen my repertoire. I look forward to seeing you next week for another insightful conversation at Atlanta Diaries.